The Shilly Affair by Barbara Lauriat, starring Professor Ben Bowling as John Hollingshead, Dr. Adrian Bradley as Charles Reed, Oliver Soden as Harry Trollope, Mark Stevens, CBE, as Anthony Trollope, and Simon Winchester, OBE, as Henry O'Neill.
Scene 1. The Garrick Club, London, April 1871. The stage is set to look like a room in a private London gentleman's club. It contains a card table with 4 chairs, a chaise longue, and 2 armchairs. Stage right is towards the club's exit, and stage left leads to another room in the club. It is dark, but the 4 men are sitting around a table playing whist and smoking cigars, except for Reed, who does not smoke or drink, and making some light noise. There is a sofa, some chairs, and a table with periodicals. The stage begins to get lighter, and they continue to play.
Aha!
Ah, trumping my king and ace.
You ain't supposed to comment on the fact, Hollingshead.
The stage is now fully lit, revealing the men playing cards.
Mr. Trollope, I hear that your latest novel is appearing in St. Paul's.
Oh, it's the worst novel I've ever written.
Oh, no, you are too modest, I'm sure. Without doubt, it is the masterpiece of your authorial maturity.
Why, thank you, Reed. I certainly hope not.
Here we are. Ralph the Heir.
To distinguish from the titular gentleman from Ralph, who is not the heir.
Pardon?
There are 2 characters named Ralph Newton. A grave mistake. Cause me endless confusion.
My sympathies to your poor readers.
And when do you and Mrs. Trollope depart for Australia?
Oh, we leave on the 24th of May to be with my youngest son amongst his sheep.
Ah, yes, your shepherd's son.
My wife's becoming terribly anxious about the journey. The sea voyage worries me less than what we shall find when we arrive at the Moortray station. I doubt it will contain all the comforts of home.
Banyan days are ahead.
Very wild. I should like to paint the Australian interior.
Millet said the same thing.
Ah, but he'd be liable to adorn the bush with apple blossoms and Quattrocento ladies-in-waiting.
Oh, not these days. I gather he's cut his ties with Ruskin, Morris and that sort.
It is very wild and sparsely populated, though, yes?
Yes, wild. Seems to suit squatters like Frederick, but my wife has insisted that we take along our own cook.
Tell me, Mr. Hollingshead, what delights will Mr. Trollope miss at the Gaiety during his Antipodean sojourn? Will we see that talented Mr. Toole in your next production? Mrs. Seymour so loved him in that recent collaboration of Mrs. Gilbert and Sullivan.
Ah, Thespis. I was rather pleased with the results of that too. I'll wager you also liked Nellie Farren as Mercury.
Indeed I did. A winsome wonder in winged sandals.
And tights. Yes, Nellie is priceless. A brilliant burlesque boy and a charming chambermaid.
You've made immeasurable contributions to the youngest of the sister arts, Hollingshead. First, the introduction of the can-can at the Alhambra, and now the most delightful principal boy in London at the Gaiety.
Then why do we see you at the theatre so rarely?
Satisfaction of work, comforts of home, alas.
Your eldest son is at the Gaiety all the time. I saw him just the other evening.
Now tell me, are you writing any plays at the moment, Mr. Reed? Perhaps Hollingshead here might produce the next.
I'm afraid I've been ill and neglecting my writing. My complaint was brought on, I believe, by the worry and anxiety of Reed versus this thief, and Reed versus that rogue, and Reed versus this other swindler.
Yes, I hear you've become rather fond of invoking the law courts, Mr. Reed.
The law is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right.
Good, good. Well, when you produce the dramatic masterpiece of your authorial maturity, send it over to me if you like. Though do make it a comedy, Mr. Reed. My audiences don't want any of this weighty stuff about prison reform. None of your realism nonsense.
Are you referring to It Is Never Too Late to Mend? Ah, you wound my amour propre.
Well, I'm half afraid you'd send me a play about a group of dull old men sitting in a club playing cards. Nothing too literary. Remember, I'm a licensed dealer in short skirts, French adaptations, and musical glasses.
You mustn't think he's in earnest.
No, indeed. At any rate, I know that plays by literary men are not always the same thing as literary plays.
Hollingshead, man, you didn't even answer Reed's question. What will I be missing at the Gaiety?
Oh, yes. Led astray.
Quite.
Well, Bussico, I think I'd like a drink.
I'll join you.
Gentlemen?
I'll be on my way home as well. Good night.
They exit.
How well do you know that funny fellow Reed? I've not known him long, although we have many friends in common.
Not at all well, although we're old acquaintances. Of course, his domestic arrangements are rather unorthodox.
Do tell. An actress?
Retired. The widow Laura Seymour keeps house for him. That is, when he's up in London and not enjoying the monastic bliss of Magdalen.
That doesn't sound so scandalous. You know, the theatrical community has always been rather flexible in these matters, not like your puritanical artistic circles.
Oh, but Reed openly takes Mrs. Seymour everywhere. Everyone visits them, and no one ever makes the slightest suggestion that there's anything improper in their relations.
Now that is shocking. It makes one miss poor old Dickens, thoroughly in the mire, but going to such lengths to keep it all decently out of the public eye.
Odd fellow, Reed, manages to give offence everywhere, though it could also be the florid language and tendency to sue everybody.
I do know he is a good friend and collaborator of Tom Taylor. Tom sold him his old chambers.
Yes, they're both barristers, aren't they?
In the broadest sense of the term. Don't think either fellow spends much time at the bar. You're more likely to find Taylor at the bar at the Alhambra. They collaborated years ago on a play, and Taylor says he'll never do that again. Reed adapted the play as a novel without so much as a by your leave, and then included a dedication to Taylor in an attempt to appease him.
Reed is a queer fellow. Strange ideas about etiquette.
Well, I don't like to think ill of a man whose character I've yet to make out for myself. He is much respected in theatrical circles, of course.
But his treatment of Taylor does smack of hypocrisy when he spent a fortune publishing a vitriolic rant about why literary works need stronger copyright laws.
Did he now? I didn't know that.
Yes, the Eighth Commandment, he called it. Trollope and I must be the only two people to have read it. Critics called it a rabid outbreak from a man of genius during a temporary aberration of intellect.
He's not immune to those. And what did you think?
Well, it's had its colourful bits. Bit of an obsession with some legal loophole in our copyright arrangements with the French. Calls it satanic, which I thought might be going a bit too far.
Quite.
The man is a thorough eccentric, the bizarre clothing, suing all of his publishers, keeping that small, tame antelope in his London house. He's an Oxford Don, after all. Do you know he once sold violins? Nearly drove his old father mad in his youth. But he's a gentle, good-hearted soul for all of that.
And a hard-working professional by all accounts. Someone must have put him up for the club. You make him sound rather amusing, though. I look forward to getting better acquainted with the fellow. I just hope he doesn't sue me.
Just where are those drinks?
Stage darkens. Scene 2, The Garrick Club, London, February 1872.
Ah, Reed, I have read your comedy. If it is a comedy.
Was it worth a candle?
Yes, I used tallow. No, it will do very well for the Gaiety. You did take your time in getting it to me, though. I expected it months ago.
Yes, I know. I am a fatal procrastinator. Nunum premature in annum is my motto.
Wait 9 years and I might be dead.
Precisely. Do you know, a few years ago, Hazelwood wrote to me and asked for an urgent loan. I did mean to give him the money, but the man died before I responded to his note. The poor fellow's ghost still haunts me.
Yes, I can see how it might. Well, we must get down to this comedy of yours, or Trollope's. The story is rather slight, but the characters are excellent.
I read the novel aloud to Mrs. Seymour, and we enjoyed it immensely. Ralph the Heir, it's called. I remember saying to her, there are gems in this book that must not be lost to the English stage. Old Trollope really does understand English life and the English character.
Indeed.
I am so glad you approve of the modest little diadem I've made from it. I had to change the wretched title, of course.
Shilly, Shally.
I believe the new title speaks to the heart of the piece. I've altered the central theme, you see. I got rid of some sorry business about an election and a biography, and the dull Ralph's unselfish filial devotion. Oh, and half the characters, of course. As for the stage, Shilly Shally focuses on that amusing social climbing tailor. For the romance, we have the handsome cad who has decided whether to marry the rich tailor's daughter or the poor, genteel girl he likes to flirt with.
Neefit the Tailor is masterpiece. I'm not so sure about the title.
But Shilly Shally gives it a bit of a modern dash, don't you agree?
It is perhaps a bit slangy. We shall have to make a few changes. The scenery seems unnecessarily complicated, in the second act and the last especially, and I'm afraid the ending needs revision.
Oh, my amour propre.
The exposition is clear at any rate. Ralph, I'm in two minds. Clary Underwood lodges 7 doors to the left. I saw her at the window as I was walking out with old Neefit. And that reminded me, I have taken no notice of her this 3 weeks. 5 doors to the right is Polly Neefit, and I'm getting awfully spoony on her. Which shall I call on first? Clary is very sweet and sentimental, and rather spoony on me. Polly is awfully jolly. I owe Clary a visit, but then I'm courting Polly. Only her father is a terrible drawback. I really am in 2 minds.
Pauses, pacing.
2 must play the role of Neefit, the social climbing tailor. I am thinking of a solid comic actor for young Ralph too. I must see if I can get Nellie Farron to agree to take the part of his daughter Polly. I'll pay Nellie a call on Wednesday. I will speak to Toole about it tomorrow, and then we must talk money. Soon.
Exit Hollingshead.
I shall be delighted.
Goodbye, Reed.
Enter O'Neill.
Was that Hollingshead I saw leaving?
Yes, he's been talking to me about staging my new play.
Oh, some translation from the French?
No, it's a dramatization of our friend Mr. Trollope's novel, Ralph the Heir.
Oh,
Yes, Mr. Trollope's dialogue and 2 of his characters, Neefit and Polly, are so delicious that they merit the stage. Unfortunately, Trollope has so little sense of the dramatic that it was damnedest hard to shape it. The trifle cost me 10 days' work.
I thought Trollope was in Australia seeing his son among the sheep.
Yes, he is. But the thing's ready for the stage and Hollingshead is very enthusiastic about it.
Trollope hasn't approved of your adaptation?
I would, of course, have consulted him if he were in England, but as he is unavailable...
So he hasn't approved even in principle? Reed, isn't that contrary to the law, or at least established custom of plagiarism or some such?
No.
Did you not spend the last decade of your life suing that Conquest fellow and half a dozen others for dramatizing your book about prisons?
It is never too late to mend. Why, yes.
Why, yes.
Oh, no. That was quite different. I had written it as a play before I wrote the novel.
You say that Conquest has made a dramatization from a novelization of your play?
Precisely. Whereas I have merely dramatized a novel. My work doesn't compete with another play by Trollope. No, nothing like that.
I see.
Mr. Trollope can hardly object, as he is not a dramatist himself.
He might object nonetheless to your treatment of his work.
I beg your pardon, but I do not see how he possibly could. Trollope condensed by Reed will succeed with the public by a law of art, which is as inevitable as the law of gravity.
I advise you to tread carefully here, Reed.
I shall write and offer him half the profits, and on the playbills, I shall be giving Trollope his due as the original inventor. I won't be advertising the comedy as solely my work, though that is the usual custom.
You know, you might speak to Harry Trollope at least and see what he thinks his father would say. I saw him in the club earlier.
A fine idea. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. In fact, I will invite the younger Mr. Trollope to dine with me on opening night. You too, if you like. At any rate, I do not see how his father could object to his name being associated with a play so thoroughly secure from failure. The intrinsic value of the types and the dialogue, and my own experience of dramatic construction, as well as the actors Hollingshead will find for us, will ensure its success. Shilly Shally will be a triumph.
Then I shall leave you to your correspondence. Goodbye, Mr. Reed.
Goodbye.
Exit O'Neill. Sound of scratching as Reed sits writing.
Dear Mr. Trollope, my dear Trollope, though the law, as I know to my cost, gives anyone the right to dramatize a novelist's story, I would not have taken this liberty without consulting you if you had been accessible. Having done it, I now propose to give the inventor that just honor, which has too often been denied him in theatrical announcements. I will also be happy to pay you half my profits to your credit. This production will, I venture to think, do you no discredit and will open the theatre to you. Should you at any time feel disposed to enter it relying on your own talent only. The proceedings of theatres are so uncertain that I am unable to say when this drama will be played.
Stage darkens and his voice fades. Scene 3, The Garrick Club, London, April 1872. Reed is clipping things out of newspapers and making noise. He coughs occasionally because he is recovering from a bad cold. He stops, reads a letter, puts it down, sighs, rifles through papers, begins clipping things out of papers frantically, picks up the letter again, coughs, puts it down, continues to clip things out of papers, coughs.
Hello, Reed. How's the play going?
I've had a most troubling letter from Trollope. Dear Reed, I am very much surprised by your letter. If I understand it rightly, you have adapted one of my plots to the stage and proposed to bring it out as a joint production of you and me. No man admires your genius more than I do, or is more fully aware of the power of your imagination. I am indeed opposed to all literary partnerships, but if I had made such a partnership with anyone, I would do it with you as soon as with any living man. But I cannot think it right that you should take my work and my name in my absence without my leave.
Allow me.
He hands the
I
letter
feel
to
this.
O'Neill. He hands the letter to O'Neill.
I feel this so strongly that I felt myself compelled to write the enclosed letter to the press, accompanied by a request that it may be published only in the event of the play having appeared or been advertised to appear with my name. As to the plot, you say you have the law on your side. I did think that the copyright law was against you, but I take it for granted you are right. At any rate, I shouldn't trouble the lawyers. And I wish you to understand that I'm very far from a desire to quarrel with you. According to my ideas of right and wrong in such matters, you are wrong. And according to my ideas also, I'm bound to let it be known publicly that I've no hand in producing the play. Very faithfully yours, Anthony Trollope.
I spoke to Harry Trollope. He did not seem to have any difficulty. I invited him to opening night, though I fear I missed it myself because of this wretched indisposition, from which I am still recovering.
But it wasn't Harry's work, it was his father's.
I have offered him more than I was ever offered in similar circumstances. Far more, I am certain, than is the custom of the trade.
And do we treat our friends by the custom of the trade? Are novels and plays merely business transactions?
You were born in Russia, were you not?
Yes, but I am an Englishman.
You are an artist. Trollope and I are not. We are artisans, honourable tradesmen. The man churns out his prose solely to line his purse. Publisher's rat.
Read.
Hollingshead enters.
Read.
Mr. Hollingshead, if this is about the rewriting of the Moggs line in Act 2, Scene 3, I am in no mood to discuss it at present.
Have you seen these reviews?
Reviews? No, I have not. As you know, I have only just today risen from my sickbed. Besides, must I concern myself with the reviews? Did you not send me a note saying that the house was nearly full, that the audience was overcome with laughter, that the applause was thunderous?
Yes, yes, the audience received the production very well. It's the damned critics.
My dear Hollingshead, your language, please. What have they said? It's not as if you two had pretensions of producing a new Lear. Were the critics not as receptive as the audience at large?
Receptive? Ha! They laughed their heads off at Toole's antics, just like everyone else. But they're singing another tune in this morning's papers, the righteous imbeciles. They complain of certain blemishes of taste.
Blemishes?
Yes, they say it's indecent.
They find the play indecent?
Yet it surely passed through the Lord Chamberlain's office.
That august gentleman raised not the slightest objection. I paid my several guineas and he sanctioned my little amusement with his official blessing. These pure and sensitive journalists, on the other hand, blush en masse for the decline of English morals as represented by Mr. Reed's salacious dialogue.
Oh, my amour propre.
What are their criticisms exactly?
The Times finds the title to be unfortunate and hopes future performances will expurgate certain passages. But the Morning Advertiser is harsher. I quote, either the vulgarities and fleshy grossness of modern burlesque have thoroughly debauched the public taste, or decent people, as we would rather hope and believe, have not individually the moral courage to hiss down the wretched double entendres which disgust them.
These prurient prudes! I have encountered their kind once or twice before in my time.
Trollope will be none too pleased about this development.
That literary knobstick.
What's this?
I shall write letters immediately to all of the papers and to my attorney. They have published a wicked and criminal calumny. Moreover, the fact that this appears in several newspapers indicates an organized conspiracy. I must fight it. I shall fight it. If I be as vindictive as my foes, there will be several indictments at the Old Bailey. I shall...
He storms out.
The timing of this news was not of the best, perhaps.
One never knows how that odd fellow will react to a thing.
Unreasonably is generally a fair guess, but he was already distraught over other news. Trollope is unhappy about the adaptation.
Yes, I'd got wind of that. I'd written to Trollope explaining that I thought he'd given his blessing to the play. Never imagined Reed wouldn't raise a subject with him until it was in production.
It surprises me less.
But one might think that Reed's own quarrels with dramatic adapters would have kept him from laying violent hands on Ralph the Heir.
It would seem to follow.
Mind you, before he became one of these serious literary novelist types, I always thought of him rather a slop-shop author, translations and adaptations, that sort of work.
Quite softening French manners for the English market, turning the gardens of the Tuileries into St. James's Park.
Yes, Boucicault and Taylor do much the same after all. The good ones do it as well as the bad. Reed may earn his keep as a crafty middleman, but he may even flatter himself in his secret heart that Shakespeare was just as unscrupulous, borrowing his plots and characters from whomever he pleased. but our funny little fiddler has hardly the same genius.
In his view, the creations of others contain jewels for him to purchase and reset.
A jeweller, indeed. A tailor, perhaps, like his old Neefit. Reed's motto should really be, gentlemen's own materials made up.
Well, best keep an eye on your own dress coat whilst you work with that man. He might turn it into a billiard jacket while you're not looking.
And see the righteous indignation if I didn't like the cut. Nellie Farron said to me just the other day, dear, kind, unjust, generous, cautious, impulsive, passionate, gentle Charles Reed.
Scene 4, The Garrett Club, London, August 1872. O'Neill is sitting on a chaise, smoking a cigar and sipping a coffee. Hollingshead walks in.
O'Neill, I've just seen the most brilliant farce.
A new show at the Gaiety?
Reed versus the Society of Licensed Victuallers over at the High Court.
His libel suit against those charming drama lovers over at the Morning Advertiser. Well, what was the outcome?
The learned judge actually awarded Reed £10 damages. I think he may appeal for more.
So, our friend's reputation is unsullied?
Reputation? Yes, I suppose. Although I wonder which friend's reputation was most at stake. Of course, Reed's counsel noted that most of the dialogue came straight out of Trollope's novel. No one has ever accused Trollope of producing a syllable of smut.
So what was particularly risque about the dialogue?
There was a violent objection to the use of the word smock.
Smock?
Smock. Reed's counsel wisely pointed out that Shakespeare himself employed the offending noun.
And?
Ah, de mortuis, the opposition noted. One ought not speak ill of the dead. John Toole told me that Reed actually asked him if he would testify in character as Neefit the tailor. Toole refused, of course.
Why? What a delightful advertisement for the play. You should revive it.
Ah, all of this hasn't done me much harm, and the literary scandal brought our bit of fluff to public attention at the first. Trollope wrote yet again to the Pall Mall Gazette, disclaiming any responsibility. I'm afraid that I advertised it as a collaborative effort. I thought Reed had Trollope's leave, if not his outright assistance.
Reed walks in.
I gather you were discussing this legal affair of mine. Well, what do you make of it? All the world is speaking of it now. One small battle against the foul conspirators has been won, but they will not be put off their single-minded malevolence for very long. As for your friend, Mr. Trollope, I cannot see him.
Oh, Reed.
No, he has said things which sit very badly with me. In fairness, I will tell you that he wrote to me and offered his forgiveness. I cannot, however, accept it. I had taken his sweat without his leave, and so given him one just cause of offence. I did not feel at peace on that cause, so I offered to pay half the English profits to his credit.
He did not accept?
He might have declined without affronting me, but he did affront me. And it seems to me in his letters to me and to the papers, he clings to this affront. The papers! My journalistic foes assemble in his camp for reasons of spite, without any inquiry into the rights and wrongs of the situation. And if these Injustinians of Fleet Street would ever acknowledge facts tending to show me in a favourable light.
And why do you think Trollope is maintaining this position?
He says he will not be made to believe that I intended to pay him any money when I wrote the play. He says he is willing to forgive, but he offers me his hand without his respect. I think we had better not go through that form. It is something more than a form with me.
So what is to be done?
Well, we are men of sense. We do not cut each other. We do not speak ill of each other.
Do you not?
Wouldn't it be wise to wait until he returns to London before attempting a reconciliation? Stop writing to each other now, yes, but try once more in a few months when he's come home. I suspect his anger will have faded to a distant memory.
He might well be at his best after a long sea voyage. I suspect he spends early mornings scratching away with his pen and evenings eating, drinking and imparting opinions at the top of his lungs to pretty young ladies.
I've just spoken to Harry Trollope, who has received a telegram. He thinks his father is still furious. I am distraught. I must go home. I will fiddle for a few hours and have a cup of hot milk to calm my nerves.
Reed exits.
Harry Trollope ought to be considering ways in which he might lessen his father's temper for his own sake. Everyone knows that he is keeping company with a certain woman of the town when he's meant to be at Chapman's, pretending to be a publisher.
Well, he's of an age where he can still claim to be sowing wild oats.
Sowing the wild oats is one thing. Reaping the worthless grain is another. After a healthy dose of gin and water, he told me in confidence that he's agreed to marry the female in question.
Marry that French actress? Trollope will have his head.
And the rest of him, I expect.
One can hardly imagine Mrs. Trollope accepting such a daughter-in-law with equanimity. She doesn't even accompany her husband to visit Mr. and Mrs. Lewis on Sundays.
One son an emigre shepherd, the other an expensive fool. I don't envy the man.
How old are your children? Hollingshead.
Good evening, Mr. O'Neill.
Stage darkens. Scene 5, The Garrick Club, London, December 1872.
Harry, my boy, will you dine with me this evening?
I have plans tonight, I fear, sir.
How is this business over at Chapman and Hall? Are you enjoying the work?
Well, it's work, but it hardly provides much in the way of enjoyment.
To the contrary, the happiest man is he who has his hands fullest of work, provided he has not money troubles. In fact, if I were to name the class of men whose lives are spent with the most thorough enjoyment, I think I should name that of barristers who are in large practice and also in Parliament.
The bar didn't suit me, as you know very well. A great grind.
But does publishing suit you any better? Harry, it's a grind that makes happiness, to feel that your days are full to overflowing, that you barely steal minutes enough to sleep, that you are doing good to others and the world looks on and approves. That's happiness.
No, sir, it is only love that brings happiness.
Well, it brings unhappiness as often as not, but a gentleman can be made happier by marriage. I cannot deny it. Is there a lady you have in mind?
Yes, there is. Mademoiselle Regnault is the sweetest lady I have ever met.
French?
Yes.
And who are her parents?
She is an orphan. She supports herself by performing on the stage, but that will, of course, come to an end as soon as we marry.
You intend to marry a French actress, to present to your mother, to other ladies of our acquaintance, a woman of that kind?
Well, you, of all people, cannot blame her for the unhappy circumstances that have led her to earn her own keep.
But I can blame her for the manner of her living, and I can fear for a son seeking an alliance that would remove him from his family and friends.
Fred has married as he chose.
Fred chose a girl appropriately suited to his mode of life on a sheep farm in Australia. I have spent £10,000 to make you a gentleman publisher in London. You will not throw it away.
Uncle Thomas married a former actress.
Harry, that was an entirely different situation. We'd known Fanny's family for years and all the particulars of her history.
But she was still an actress.
For you even to suggest that as a comparable match demonstrates you are far too naive to understand the dangers.
Naive? Father.
Enough. Harry, you claimed you wished to visit your brother in Australia. You're going immediately. I shall make the arrangements.
Harry storms off. Scene 6, The Garrick Club, London, a few days later, December 1872. Hollingshead and Trollope are in the middle of discussion and Trollope is pacing.
Let the law be as it may. I don't think it's right that one man should put another man's name on a playbill or a title page without the sanction of that other man. A playwright should not take the plot of his contemporary writer without his sanction.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I haven't read this Shally, and I don't want you to think, or read to think, my feelings have anything to do with its merits.
No.
I don't hold you responsible. I accept your explanation that you were ignorant of the truth of the situation.
We both know Reed's an odd fellow.
Odd fellow or not, I simply cannot see why he will not accept my forgiveness. That obstinate man acts as though the wrong has been done to him.
Reed was displeased that you wrote to the papers. He has a notion that there is a far-reaching conspiracy to ruin him brewing throughout the Greater London journalistic profession.
I should have been pusillanimous were I not to express my opinion and correct the facts surrounding the production. The papers were the appropriate forum in which to do so.
Of course, but Reed also thought your rejection of the profits was a personal affront. Could you not have taken the money? You might as well have reaped some benefit from the venture.
Take the money?
I've heard you claim on several occasions that you write for money.
Yes, by God, I do write for money, and I write for fame and repute. Why should it matter why I write? What does it have to do with the novel once I've written it?
Harry told him he thought you wouldn't mind if Reed paid you half the profits.
Damn fool, Harry. I've sent Harry packing. He'll be joining his brother in New South Wales. What a disaster this Australian trip has been. Fred married, Harry compromised, and our cook, she stayed behind in Australia.
Harry is going to Australia?
That's what I said. He departs in just over a week, on Christmas Day. Get him away from this absurd situation before he does further damage to his family or that unfortunate woman. I know you're a ruddy gossip. Everyone in London will know about this sorry affair, but it serves my son right. In fact, it serves me right.
Will he be back?
God only knows. Hollingshead, I advise you to keep close watch over your offspring. The literary as well.
Trollope exits, slamming the door.
Well, this is my last foray into literary drama. Literary drama is just another phrase for a hornet's nest.
Hollingshead sits down and lights a cigar. O'Neill and Reed come in.
Greetings, fellows. I'm just speaking to Trollope. He's in a desperate state.
Oh, he's tired from his wanderings, no doubt.
It did not strike me as fatigue. More a case, methinks, of his ducats and his daughter, if you follow me.
Reed, have you and Trollope spoken since his return?
I have nothing to say to the man. He calls me dishonest, and I protest I am not. That is all.
Oh, Reed, why don't you just apologise and have done with it? Just act appropriately contrite. He'll forgive you, I'm sure. Never too late to mend, eh?
Go to the devil, Hollingshead.
Now, Reed.
It's quite all right. He knows the devil and I have a weekly cribbage game. But Satan has an appointment in Scarborough today, so I'm at leisure. Come, Reed, let's have a game of whist.
We need a fourth.
I'm sure someone will soon wander by.
They take 3 chairs. Sound of footsteps approaching.
Ah, Trollope, come join us.
Trollope pauses. He walks over and takes the empty chair silently. Still silent, they begin playing whist, and the stage darkens as we hear the sound of cards. Epilogue.
For a few years, Trollope and Reed did not speak, but did play the occasional game of silent whist in the Garrick Club. O'Neill painted Trollope's portrait in 1873. It still hangs in the Garrick. In 1874, Hollingshead became embroiled in Toole against Young, an important copyright case over the dramatisation of a novel he had written. His disappointment at the outcome led him to establish an association for the protection of the rights of authors, along with Reed, Charles Dickens Jr., Thomas Hardy, and others. Reed also published a series of 13 articles in the Pall Mall Gazette on the rights and wrongs of authors. The association sent a deputation to Benjamin Disraeli to lobby for copyright law reform, and their efforts led to the formation of a Royal Commission on Copyright in 1875. Trollope was appointed as a member of the Royal Commission, which recommended reserving to authors the right of dramatising their novels. By then, he and Reed were on speaking terms again. When Harry Trollope published his father's autobiography in 1883, he chose to omit the following passages his father had written about Charles Reed and the Shilly affair. Quote, "There is no writer of the present day who has so much puzzled me by his eccentricities, impracticabilities, and capabilities as Charles Reed. I look upon him as endowed almost with genius, but as one who has not been gifted by nature with ordinary powers of reasoning. He can see what is grandly noble and admire it with all his heart. He can see too what is foully vicious and hate it with equal ardour. But in the common affairs of life, he cannot see what is right or wrong. And as he is altogether unwilling to be guided by the opinion of others, he is constantly making mistakes in his literary career and subjecting himself to reproach which he hardly deserves. He means to be honest. He means to be especially honest, more honest than other people. And yet, of all the writers of my day, he has seemed to me to understand literary honesty the least."
The end. Thank you.